This morning I'll be presenting on the topic, the National Strategy to Improve Dietary Intake. This is in accordance to some evidence base. I'm sure most of the strategies that I'll be outlining is already been documented in our policies and guidelines. But we'll see how better we can improve this. As an individual, our goals regarding food is, first we want to bring up children, feed them with nutritious food so that they grow up to be healthy children. And if we do that properly in the basic years of life, we will be growing up to be free from diseases and from health problems or lifestyle diseases, which we now call NCDs. And also with the goal that we'll be living more longer, and not only living longer, suffering, but living healthy. Okay? Okay, if we go through our NCD stats globally, it says that non-communicable disease exceeds 34 million deaths annually, and it's about 65, it causes about 65% of global deaths. That's a big number. Okay? It's over 50% of all deaths globally. NCD is covering about 65% of deaths. And global burden disease study related, they did find out that unhealthy diet as the leading risk factors. In this, we know that NCDs has 4 main risk factors as unhealthy diet, physical inactivity, alcohol use, and tobacco use. But out of the 4, unhealthy diet is the leading one that causes death and disability globally. And it was also documented that globally, increased consumption, they found that there's an increased consumption of processed foods. And this is one factor that's driving NCD burden. And when we say processed food, a lot of people are buying a lot of cheap foods. Foods that's high in energy, high in energy dense, nutrient poor foods, and compounded with low fruits and vegetables. Okay? They're already eating unhealthy foods high with dense energy, and on the other side they are not taking in fruits and vegetables. And this is what we call the Western diet, because a lot of people are buying a lot of pre-packed foods. Yeah? Meals, they are not preparing foods at home. They find it easier to go and buy ready-made food instead of them providing their own at home. And this, in response to increasing NCD rates, many governments are implementing multi-faceted policy interventions. A lot of governments, developed countries, have come up with researchers to move their intervention in better intake of nutrition. So let's look at our state here in Fiji. In the 2010 Global Burdens of Disease, they found that there was a high death rate in Fiji leading from premature deaths, which were linked to ischemic heart disease, diabetes, and cerebrovascular disease. Okay? This was in Fiji alone. It was the highest in that. And to those who were dying, the leading risk factors were high BMI, dietary risks, high fasting plasma glucose, and high plasma glucose, fasting plasma glucose. So also they found that in 2005, in the food balance sheet shows that Fiji is import dependent. We're now depending a lot on our import foods rather than our homegrown foods. Okay? It says, in the report it says Fiji was 88% import dependent on rice, 55% import dependent on vegetables, and 36% dependent on fruits. Even fruits and vegetables we were depending on, leave alone the the empty spaces we have, the empty lands we have, to utilize it for our resources, our vegetables and fruits, and yet we're still importing a lot of this. So the trend, we can say, is towards consumption of processed foods. We are now moving to the trend of consuming a lot of processed foods. And if we think of processed foods, there's three pillars that we have to think of that's containing in the processed food, which is salt, sugar, and fat. Okay? Those are the culprits to increasing NCDs. Research done by Pogue and his colleagues in 2014 found that consumption of fat and sugar, salt, sugar, and fat intake, it lights up a pleasure center in the brain. Yeah, so if we take that a lot, it lights up this center, our pleasure center in the brain, which causes addiction. Just the same thing cocaine does to the brain. So these three culprits, salt, sugar, and fat, they light up that center. Okay? And it crosses that addiction. It causes craving for sugar. Every now and again we crave for something sweet. Yeah? And also, in that, it leads us to over-consuming things. So even though people were eating, were dependent on fruits and vegetables, and we have some that we locally grown, the research or the survey found that 85% of Fiji population did not meet the recommended guideline, which is 5+ serving of fruits and vegetables. A lot of people are taking only 3.9 vegetables per day, servings per day, 3.9 per day a week. Eh? And the fruits was lower than that. So when we think of how we're moving with our dietary intake locally in Fiji, now we come up with a question: how can diet be improved to prevent NCDs? We are now realizing that we are consuming a lot of processed foods. And what can we do to prevent NCDs? There's two strategies that we can use. We call it a downstream and upstream policy. Okay? With downstream, we focus on behavior. And behavior interventions focusing on individuals. So we focus on individuals. We try and change an individual's behavior, then that'll trickle down to the community where the person lives. But the upstream policy is we aim to promote healthier environment. So we focus on strategies, policies. Many of the upstream policies options include targeting price, promotions, provision, composition, labeling of foods, supply chain, trade, investment, or combination of either of those ones. Okay? So, and this is where I'll be focusing on upstream strategy. Okay? Okay, let's see what's been currently implemented in Fiji to better our consumption. There is a non-communicable disease strategy plan 2015 to 2019. We also have, Fiji has the Pacific Island Food Composition, which the National Food NFC Nutrition Center is using, and also I'm sure all the other divisions are using. The Food and Health Guideline for Fiji, Global Action Plan for the Prevention and Control of NCDs for the period 2013 and 2020. Yeah? These are some of the major strategies or guidelines or policies that I found that's already been utilized here in Fiji. And we are following some of what's been documented in there. Like, for example, Food and Health Guideline for Fiji, it's been documented the amount of sugar and salt and fat that we should use. non-communicable disease strategic plan 2015 and 2019, how it's been made up now is based on multi-sectoral approach. Okay? Based on recognition that NCD cannot be tackled alone by Ministry of Health. So that's how they've written the strategic plan. So the drivers of poor lifestyle behaviors are outside the Ministry of Health, and also multi-stakeholders are already playing a critical role in dealing with NCD. Example, some of the other stakeholders are Ministry of Youth and Sports, which are doing, I would say, workshops and trainings on how people can better look after their youths to do their home growing, planting, gardening and all that, farming. Ministry of Health curriculum has now changed to healthy lunch and gardening in schools. And also they're monitoring BMI levels of school children. Friends of Fiji is providing seedlings and farming tools. So those are other stakeholders that's working together to better the this strategy that's been focused on this. And WHO has also released its Global Action Plan for the prevention and control of NCDs for the period of 2013-2020. This was released in 2013. Okay? And this was also endorsed in the 66th World Health Assembly and includes a manual policy to all member countries. Since we are a member of WHO, we are coming under this, we are adopting this. Okay? The Global Action Plan for Prevention and Control. And in that, it has some 9 targets that we'll be working towards to 2025. So the targets are, the 9 targets that we're working towards is that, I'm sure you can you read? First one is premature mortality from NCD, 25% reduction. That's the main target. And then you have the other things that the other targets that you should do to achieve the 25% reduction of NCD in 2025. And it says tobacco use, they're targeting 30% reduction by 2025. Salt and sodium intake is about 30% reduction by 2025. In the what's the other guideline? In one of this non-communicable disease strategic plan, it says that Fiji is targeting 20% reduction, salt reduction by 2020. So by 20% in 2020, and then 25% in and 30% in 2025. So we're working towards achieving that. Eh? Now we go to some of the similarities. So I'm just comparing tobacco. Now that we know tobacco has come to a stand fast. It hasn't really increased in the last decades, tobacco intake, consumption. So how is tobacco, or how come tobacco is able to hold or to decrease the number of consumption? So some of those strategies that they use have been also adopted. So now food and nutrition I've just put up some of the strategies that's similar to what tobacco did. Okay, so they've come up with taxes. Okay, with tobacco they said 10% increased price results in 4.1. That's through evidence. 4.1% decrease in tobacco use. Okay? And on the other side, nutrition with sugar sweetened beverages. When they increase taxes, 10% increase, prices associated with 8 to 10% reduction in sugar sweetened beverages. So if we increase the price of these beverages, the consumption will be less. And also 5 to 20% tax could reduce calorie intake to about by 10 to 48% in adults and 5 to 8% in children. Even a small fat tax of 5 to 17%, it says it might reduce fat consumption by 0 to 3% and reduce substitution with lower fat options. Even fat tax. Increasing the price of salty foods by 40% was suggested to reduce sodium consumption by approximately 6%. Okay? These are evidence that have been done in other countries. These are reviews. I'm putting up reviews. That's been proven that if we increase the tax or prices for this, remember we've talked about these are the culprits that's in these processed foods: fat, sugar, and sugar, salt, and fat. If we increase prices of this, on the other side, we'll decrease the uses, the consumption. Another strategy was to subsidize. Okay? Subsidies is done for fruits and vegetables. So 6 modeling studies reported 0.49 mean price elasticity for fruit and vegetables, suggesting a 20% subsidy on fruits and vegetables might increase consumption by 10%. If you subsidize, decrease the price of fruits and vegetable, consumption will increase. And on the other side, when you tax or increase money for those culprits, the consumption will decrease. And food promotion. For tobacco, advertising ban. It was being legislated, like tobacco ban. Tobacco promotion was to be banned. And when they did that, it was associated with 6.3 reduction in smoking per adult. So companies were not to be advertising their products. And with nutrition, banning of unhealthy foods. Advertisements on television might reduce this was a study done in US, baseline rate of childhood obesity. Because a lot of our children now watch, because what advertisements do, they put influential people, known people in the advertisements. And these children, they see them and see how healthy they are, and they think what they're eating will bring them all those things that they're looking forward to. But if we ban these things, it also has effect on how they grow. And one of the effective strategy was multi-component intervention. Tobacco has proven that complex intervention achieve long-term continuous abstinence ranging from 7 to 40%. Multi-component was using a few components like tax and subsidy running together, or promotion and tax running together. For nutrition, trans fat voluntary limits combined with mandatory labeling. For this, it has to come from the industries, how they voluntarily lower that fat level, and they document it in their labeling. So it has to come from the industries, the manufacturers. And this is one of the food labeling is very important. And if they rightfully write what they put in the content, and people are taught on how to read those labels, and this has been proven that it can cause 30% reduction in dietary trans fat intake. Okay? Fruits and vegetables combined with provision and promotion activities found as increase in fruit and vegetable intake of 2.54 servings per day. Promoting a lot of these things. We can see in our televisions, they're only promoting processed foods, sweet beverages. Why don't we promote these healthy foods, these locally grown fruits and vegetables, and how its impact into our health? And with researchers, it's been found that it also increased the number of servings to 2.54 servings per day if promotion was properly done. Conversely, single intervention rarely increased intake by less or more than 0.5 serving. A study done in UK on salt program has been evaluated, and 1.5 gram per day reduction was observed between 2001 to 2011. Okay. And banning. of soft drinks and snacks in schools. Okay. By the way, when we come to multi-component advertisements and all these restrictions, with tobacco, it has been legislated that below 18 years, children you're not allowed to buy cigarettes, but not with foods. Yeah? These young children, it hasn't been legislated that they cannot buy unhealthy food. So why don't we think otherwise on that side? Like we as parents are not with them most of the time, but if this has been legislated and the shopkeepers know that it's unhealthy for them to sell this to the child alone without thinking of the consequences, it'll better their consumption rates. Yeah? So legislations requiring calorie labels nationally and voluntary commitment if food industries agree to it. Banning of soft drinks and snacks in schools and advertising effective intervention to decrease intake and potentially reduce obesity level. Taxing of snacks is one of the cost-effective strategies. It only doesn't only decrease amount of snack consumption, it also generates revenue to the government. And with tobacco, they use that revenue in health promotion again. Yeah? The revenue that tax brings into the government, they utilize that revenue in promoting more health. Why don't we do that for our snacks, all our snacks? Increase the tax, and on one side it can decrease consumption and also brings in revenue to the government. Combination of taxes, you tax sugar, salt, and saturated fat together, okay? And not just salt alone. And combination of food taxes and subsidies. Those are some of the multi-component intervention that can be utilized. So this was one of the promotions that I came across during this module, which our local nutritionists did in the hospital, which I found was very informative because they did salt. These are the local foods that we can access locally here in Fiji, and see the amount of salt that we take in a packet of noodles. Yeah? In one sitting, a person takes a packet of noodle in one sitting for a meal. People who don't prepare their food from home, and the amount of salt is about 3 point something per salt. Yeah, and the guideline says we don't exceed 5 grams per day, but that packet of noodle alone is more than half of the amount of salt that you should take in a day. So this, I found this very informative because they did the labeling and informed the public on how much salt they were taking from these local foods, and also with sugar. Sweet beverages, it says there are 15 teaspoons of sugar in that bottle of frizzy drink. By the way, we were supposed to just take 1 tablespoon per day, if I'm correct. Yeah. And yeah, see how much more we're taking from just a bottle of frizzy drink. And on the other side, they were also promoting healthy snacks. Instead of taking salty, sugary foods, they were also promoting some of the alternatives that we have locally that we can substitute for healthier person, healthier consumption as well. Yeah, those were the things I found during this module that I thought was a good a step done by the nutritionists in our local hospital. That they're also, I think they're following their guidelines in promoting healthy foods and discouraging people to use the processed foods. So to conclude, increasingly strong evidence is highlighting potentially powerful policies to improve that. There's a lot of evidence to support us on this, that taxing unhealthy foods will decrease consumption. and all that, and also multi-component. So out of all the evidence that I found, the strategies, I found that taxing and multi-component to be the most important ones. Yeah? As it say, multi-component and price interventions appear consistently powerful in improving healthy eating. Okay? Combination of national and local levels action is clearly beneficial to the implementation of food and nutrition. Despite the government coming up with a policy and strategy, it won't be effective if we don't involve other stakeholders. So a strategy should be, to be influential or to be effective, we should also inform or involve the other stakeholders for it to run effectively. That's my reference, and thank you for your time in listening.